All right, thank you, Sindra, and thanks for the Shift team for welcoming on stage and on this event. It's not the first time in Oslo, but it's the first time I had a chance to be with the tech community of Oslo and beyond. And as a starting point, I like to experiment stuff. And I like to experiment stuff in the audience. So, and because it's a shift, it's about different perspectives, I like to become a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm going to ask you to do a not very complex exercise. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. I know you hate because of cell phones, I have to put them on the chair. And then, it's extremely complex. You're going to turn to your right. Right, your right, just to clarify. Use both your hands and put them on the shoulder of the person in front of you. And now you're going to do a really nice massage to that person. Sorry, Anna. Really nice. Norwegian style, whatever that means. And now you turn to your left. And because it's about retribution, put the hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you and do a really nice massage back. As good as the person gave you. All right, now a bit more relaxed. So the reason why I do this is just to sense how crazy can I go in this audience. That's the only reason I do this exercise. I did this exercise in Inbound in Boston. I can tell you the reaction was not the same. The reaction was like, why? If I touch, do I get sued? What happens to me? So, doesn't work the same way in the same country. So, to give a bit of a perspective, I'm going to talk about building teams that last, because it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And just to give a perspective why I'm on stage, so I see myself as a crossover of a host, a builder, and an accelerator. And on the host side, that is very much thanks to Isaac, which is the largest youth-led organization. I spent many years in Isaac as a student and beyond a student, maybe perhaps some people say a bit too many years, but I end up actually leading the organization at global level. So I was ultimately responsible for the network of 60,000 people, maybe 300, 400 FTEs indirectly, and a team in dark Rotterdam of 20 people of 16 different nationalities that didn't know that the Dutch closed their offices at 5 p.m. In any case, that allowed me to be able to understand the importance of hosting and multicultural teams. And I was able to travel to a fair amount of countries. I think next year I will be able to hit the 60 countries. Unfortunately, yes, CO2 footprint is quite high, but that's why I actually offset my CO2 emissions every year on the flights that I take. But that allowed me to understand the power of hosting and why sometimes it's important to be uncomfortable on the leading position. Also, this happened. So at the end of my year, because of the expansion of so many people, it seems that there was some program of Western Union I joined for fun. And, like around September 2011, I received a phone call from Western Union, and not that Western Union is anywhere connected to, scams or something. And they called me, and I was in Portugal taking a short leave after being in India. And they said, yes, Hugo, yeah, I'm calling from Western Union, just to let you know that you were selected or named as the most connected person in the world. I of course thought this is a scam, they're going to ask me to pay for something, I'm pretty sure. So as the person was talking to me, I was going on LinkedIn and seeing if the person was real. And then as the person was saying the name, I was like, oh man, these guys are good, that person actually exists. So I was like, well, can you tell me more information? Everything he was saying was all online. So finally, I actually believed he was telling the truth. So there was this algorithm, I don't know how, on Facebook that told that basically I was able to reach out to 400,000 people in 200 countries. So I got invited to a couple of social events and they donated, I got a reward of a bunch of thousands of dollars, which I donated completely to a charity that I work with in India. But that was a fun element. Since then, I actually removed more than half of my network. Because it's about value, and at a certain point in time, Facebook became more of a feed rather than a value time where I connected to my friends. So sometimes, these things seem nice, but the value of it is not that much there. So moving actually to the part, I moved afterwards to India, moved to Belgium, worked with early stage startups, from 1 to 20 people. And the funny thing with 1 to 20 people, there's not separate teams. The company is a team. That's essentially what happens. And then finally, that's why it's a builder, building up from scratch, building up the company. And the last one was with the EVBox, where I am still today, and joined 3.5 years ago, and we were 10 people. Now we are at 250 plus and growing rapidly. We build electric vehicle charging solutions for electric cars to charge at home, businesses, and cities. I know that Norway is quite a fan of electric cars, and many of you probably have Teslas. So if you have a Tesla you need to charge, is my only pitch today. So I'm responsible for the marketing and growth team, and across all these years I coached probably with Isaac and beyond Isaac about 200 teams across the globe. And there are a couple of principles that I found that help the teams last. So some teams, they stay for a short time, some teams go for a long time. So I'm actually just sharing some of these principles with you and hope that you have some food for thought afterwards. So to get started, the first one is about shared ownership. And I know it seems obvious, but one of the main things I noticed between teams I work with was that people know the mission, people know the vision, people know the values of the company, but rarely they are part of the conversation. And that's where it starts becoming challenging for the teams, because you can like a mission, you can be connected to a mission of a company you work with, but if you never talked about it, if you never engaged in these conversations, if you're never part of it, you don't have shared ownership. Teams that have shared ownership, they last longer because they are part of it. They are part of the conversation. And to give an example, for example, in this current team, this was in 2018, we set the priorities for the company, for EVBox, our goals of amount of charging points, our mission. So the company defined these goals. And then that was it. All right, here is the PPT, guys. Just go after it. Doesn't work that way. So then we took a level further, which is every team has to have a conversation on what it means to them. How are they going to contribute to the overall goal of the organization and the mission? They are part of the conversation. And not just on the priorities of every team, but also on the values of the team. Because every team is unique. So even if there are values of the company, and even if you set the culture and the values that should be across the whole organization, every team has its quirks. So also on the team that I'm coaching and I'm leading, we also define our own values that contribute to the overarching of the company. So shared ownership is really a critical element, because what it means essentially is make sure your team is part of the conversation. That was the first one. Second one, it seems extremely simple, but it's trust. Creating and evoking trust. And again, all of these principles are going to be standard and simple, and yet most of the teams are not able to put all of them in practice. What I mean with trust is the ability, as Yaro was saying now, there is a sense of vulnerability. And one of the interesting things I learned in Isaac as hosting is that, for example, we had to build a mid-term ambition, so a 5-year plan for the organization, and we decided to put a big, hairy, audacious goal, where even Jim Collins helped us out. And so we decided to work with a methodology called appreciative inquiry. And the interesting thing is, trust happens when you have to be on stage with your team and say, okay guys, you're going to work for the next 10 days on the upcoming 5 years goal, and you don't know what the outcome will be. It's a high level of uncertainty. So that only can happen if you have a high level of trust. And that happens in two ways. If you see on the top part, you see a smiley face and a sad face, and the bottom part, you see ideas and plans. So the bottom part is more on the rituals, and the upper part is more on the feedback session. Trust is created on those elements. If you have an interaction with your team or an interaction one-on-one, it is an opportunity to say something that is going really well, the person is doing well or the team is doing well, or something that could be even better, that can push them to go beyond. On the bottom part is more of the rituals. Do the people have the trust and the space to share their ideas? Do they have the space to celebrate, to acknowledge each other, to celebrate not just accomplishments of the office, but also individual things? A new baby is born. Do you send something personalized to them? Are those Does it transcend this trust beyond the office? So that's the second element. When a team is able to create and evoke trust, they last longer. Then on the third side, we have one that seems extremely simple. Everyone wants to set a mood for success. It's just impossible. No one wants to set a mood for failure. But failure is going to happen. What I noticed that happened where success or a mood for success starts failing is on a team leader, on a manager. Because what I see in most of the cases, the higher they go up, the more they make themselves the winners. While it should be, the higher you go up in the organization, the less is about you winning yourself, and the more is about making other people winners. And that happens in small situations. So these are, literally pictures that I took from one of our last retrospectives, where we look at the end of the week. Do you learn anything new about it as a team, as an individual? Do you have any insight from the business? Do we rank our week? If it was a 5, well done, let's all clap, it was a great week. If it was a 3 or a 2, how can the person has a trust and a mood that my team is going to help me succeed? And the last one, which I thought was a great idea at the time, we moved to a new headquarters and I decided to buy these champagne, confetti, party poopers kind of thing. I don't know how to call them. But I decided to buy them because I told the team, you use these when you have an accomplishment that you feel personal. My team took it as soon as we hit our goals, we're going to pop all of them. That was exactly the outcome. So, not a great idea, but this mood for success has rituals. It's about helping the people be successful rather than yourself. Then the fourth element or the fourth principle is about roles. And everyone has a role and a responsibility. You all handle companies, startups, you have a role and you set roles for the team. Someone is the SEO specialist, someone is the finance manager, someone is the copywriter. And those are roles, but the informal roles are the hard ones to find. What are those roles that are not written anywhere, but that that makes the team thrive? I'll give an example. On the team that I'm heading today, I know that the check-in and check-out of the team on a Monday morning and Friday evening sets the pace of the team. If that Monday meeting is good and if that retrospective feels good, I know that the next week is going to be great. So, who's the owner of that informal role? Because it cannot be always me. Who are the people on my team that help me have a great Monday morning and a great Friday evening? So on those, there is the Belbin test where you can find who's the team worker, who's the resource investigator, who's the planter. That's a nice one. There's plenty of other ones, but the idea is find what are the informal processes on your team that make them thrive. The fifth one, which was also touched upon on the Google rules, which is set the bar. It's about standards. And there's two ways of looking at setting the bar. One of them is role-specific, one of them is behavior-specific. Role-specific, everyone knows. If you are a content marketing manager, how many visits, how much time on page. If you are on behavior side, can be things like discipline. Does a person arrive on time to the meeting? Does he set an agenda before it comes? Is he late, not late? So there's a couple of behavior steps. Most of the teams have these that I have met. They set these sooner or later. You probably have these. The challenge here is more that most of these are a snapshot. You look at how much a person achieved now. You look at the behavior now. What I welcome teams that last is that they have a sense of progress. That's the dynamic evaluation that happens. These teams that last, they feel a sense of progress. I like to see that, for example, some of my team members now in this team and before, they move from graphic designers to creative marketeers. There's a sense of progress because their role kept on evolving and they kept on becoming better professionals and not just better, at their own role. So this idea of setting the bar also helps out. You initially set the bar in this level of the plus, but then you set plus, 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 plus. But setting this bar as a progress element and not as a snapshot helps also the people on the team feeling that they are going, improving better and better. Then the sixth element, and getting there, is a way of working. And of course, the way of working is an acknowledgement of how people collaborate and decide. So, I normally like to see, these organizational charts that I took on how, Amazon works, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, which seems to be a bigger legal team than anything else. But if you see from just an organizational structure point of view, they have very few in common. Because the structure doesn't matter. It's the way of working, it's the flow of the company, the flow of the team that makes things move. So, for example, here is where you look at design thinking, or agile, or waterfalls, or Scrum. Those are all ways of building a team. Some teams work, some teams not. Some of my early teams were based on project management. They like to work from project to project. That same project management style didn't work in another team. Working on squads works in some companies. Working, in a formal structure works in some other ones. No one can tell you what will work or not for your structure of the company. You have to experiment. And that's the interesting thing of the way of working. I like to experiment on my team. So, for example, at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, I like to take time with the team and ask themselves, okay, as a team, as a way we work together, what can we do? What things can we create or eliminate that will help us change for the positive? And what are the things that we can preserve that they are doing really well? And what are things that we have to accept that is just intrinsic to the team, that we cannot change because it is the way it is, and it's just, unless there's a new person coming or a disruption, it will be hard to change. So accepting is part of the process. What you see on the top is basically, I think a lot of you recognize Jira. Even if it's a marketing and growth team, I manage them as a software team because I was a product owner before. So we work on sprints, on subtasks, and it's quite fun because, fast pace is quite important nowadays. So this works on this team. 7th point, which is ABL. Does anyone know what ABL stands for in the context of growth? Always be learning. Well done. So yes, always be learning, developing and maintaining practice of learning and innovating. And here, of course, I think, Frank, our Brain Master, has way more information than me. But of course, what I noticed that a lot of the teams, it's not coming up. There you go. A lot of the teams focus on, my team has to learn, has to get new skills. So you learn better copywriting, you learn better SEO, you go to this workshop of growth, you go to this conference. Some other people take the whole other scenario where, big corporations spend a lot of time on prioritization, time management. Some people do both. Every company has different ways of learning and has different practices. There's some good that doesn't work, it doesn't work. What for me is crucial, and that's the point of Teams and Last, is that personal and professional development is part of the planning process. So when you are planning your priorities for next year, for the next quarter, this has to be part of the process of your team. What are we going to learn the next month as a team? Both professionally or personal. What are you going to learn as an individual next quarter, as a professional and as personal? And then based on that, you do the investments, and you help the people become, better at their role. The 8th, before the last one, is care. It seems pretty obvious. Of course we have to care for the team. The most common sentence I hear from organizations, C-level people, founders, is people are our biggest asset. You always hear this away. People are the biggest asset. I can tell you majority of them, they don't know what it means yet because there's not a sense of caring. They see the teams as a means to an end. So caring really means that you look at your team beyond the times that they are excelling, but also the times of frustration, because no one is paying attention when we excel. So I started drawing a couple of months ago, doing drawing lessons. This is one of my first drawings, so please bear with me. So the teacher of drawing was saying, oh, you have to draw something on how you see yourself, and for some reason I came up with a duck and a turtle shell on the water. No reason why, but that's what came out of it. Maybe I saw it somewhere. But for me, it was all about authenticity. And that's the thing about caring. Caring can only happen if you are authentic. And for a team leader to be vulnerable is the only way to let authenticity come out. If you allow some vulnerability and if you allow to be authentic to your team also will allow you to go beyond the shelf, to have a higher, deeper level of understanding. And then the ripple effect of your team goes beyond that teams and goes to other teams. Because the more authentic the teams are, the more empowering and inspiring they are to each other. So that's more on the care side. Care happens when you are authentic about it. And then last one of the principles that I stand by or I live by is fulfillment. And it's probably the one that I care the most about, which is, I see it, my ultimate role for a team. Of course, there is always a level of performance of the team that achieves the goals and the bars that it sets itself to. But is the team evolving? Is the team being fulfilled? Even if that means that they have to evolve somewhere else. And even on the moon, because I'm very passionate about space. One day it might happen. But that's because people join a company or take a role because of what they can do. But teams that last, they stay because of what they can be or become. From the moment that anyone on your team doesn't feel they are becoming a better version of themselves, they're going to start looking elsewhere. And sometimes that's fine, because everyone has a limit on their organization, on their journey, you know? We move from peak to peak, and that's what we have to understand as a person, as an individual, as a team, as a company. Once you reach a peak, you have to start descending, which is an extremely tough part of climbing. After descending, you go ascend the next mountain. You don't know how big is the mountain or not. Moving from peak to peak is a common way of life. And you have to help your team members and your teams and your squads to move to the next peak. And sometimes that might not be in your organization. The fact that I'm not worried if my team members will one day go somewhere else or not, I'm just worried about them becoming the better version of themselves professionally and personally every day, makes it I'm extremely comfortable. There will be a day that probably some of them will say, Ugu, I reached my limit, I have to try something else somewhere else. And I'll be the first one to say, you know, one, let me see if I can find something there to push you beyond, but if I cannot find, let me help you out on the next journey, because that's ultimately the role of a team leader. I'll even say, to a certain extent, a co-founder, if you want to take fulfillment to a customer level. So looking at it all together, and because I did this in a metro road style, because I don't think there is a predefined route, there's not like a sequence that you can follow. These are principles that maybe some of you can take some of them, maybe something caught your attention, but ultimately, if there is a sense of shared ownership, a team is part of the conversation. If you know what informal roles and processes actually trigger your team that make them thrive, if you set up a mood for success and set a bar high, but also help them reach out with progressive evaluation, help them always be learning, care about them, evoke and create trust and embody trust, be vulnerable, evolve the way of working continuously, let them be part of the way of working of the team, and ultimately help them being fulfilled. Those 9 principles will help ensuring that teams will last longer than usual. And that's some of the 9 principles that I saw and live by in the next couple of years. I'm still experimenting them, because that's the ever evolving of a leader, is to always be experimenting and evolving the way of thinking, the way of managing a team, and understanding that you yourself have to keep evolving. So still sharp on time, so that's great. And I know that lunch is coming, so I hope this triggers some thoughts on you, and thank you so much.